he surrendered, took on the shame of the world. Love hits him, and now we get the Holy Spirit.
The Christ story is obviously profound and at the bedrock of Western civilization.
People really don't care about what you do. They care about what you do after you reach your rock bottom. That's what people are looking at.
So you are a former Navy SEAL. You went on a non-traditional medical journey to heal yourself.
After 16 years, I was diagnosed PTSD. I showed up to the medicine, rock bottom. I had an ex-wife that did some things to me, pretty shitty. Took my kids, played the system.
I've been through some things in my life, but that was, I think, the hardest thing I had been through up until that point. Yeah, because it actually hit me where it really hurt.
So I learned how to let go on psychedelics, but I also learned how to let go and surrender through my faith when it got real hard in Hell Week. 212 miles with a boat on your head. You're hypothermic most of the week. Your skin's rotting off. The chafing is the worst out of everything. And if you have a reason to quit, your mind's gonna go there. And you get that 1,000-yard stare. And one of the hardest things for me is when we lose someone to suicide. It's usually because they couldn't let go. The thing that saved me was being strong enough to let go.
You'll love this quote by Carl Jung if you haven't heard it. I've been repeating it on almost every episode. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you will call it fate.
Yeah.
So the whole point of being human is to like take these complex processes that we are and are a part of and make it conscious. Once it's conscious and we can name it, we can start to do something about it.
Yep.
But if it's just unconscious, it controls you basically. Even your own patterns, right? When someone triggers you and you go into this unconscious, rage or sadness or whatever it is, like that's because you haven't made that part of yourself conscious yet and done something about it.
Yeah. Carl Jung also said, we have nothing to fear except man. He said, you have nothing to fear except for man. We're the greatest, we're the only thing preventing us from doing really good stuff in this world.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. He's probably one of the most brilliant minds. I think a lot of the psychedelic and nature stuff goes to Carl Jungian.
For sure.
Jungian.
Yeah.
Him and Joseph Campbell.
Yeah. Well, and Joseph Campbell, I think, derived a lot of his stuff from Jung. So, I like Campbell a lot.
Yeah. And I'll probably bring something up for the podcast for that. But the theme of the podcast about, the decentralized medicine, right? Or decentralized healthcare. Yeah. So, essentially that's same thing we're teaching the veterans is you have to learn to create a safe container to heal yourself.
Yes.
And that safe container needs to be identifying in your environment what is not letting me change. And then now that gets into relationships and stuff, which is a little murky based off belief systems and stuff. A lot of shame with children and all that stuff. So it gets real complicated, but
that was the last day of the Cambo. I felt like I was vomiting up shame. Honestly, that was the emotional release.
I've heard a lot of psychedelic, experiences. I've gotten to absorb a lot of those, and it's not even a coincidence to me anymore. But shame is the lowest form of emotional energy because it attacks your noun, which is your I am statement. And so, eventually we get to identity and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then you go, whoa. So shame is the thing that, like, I say to any addict or person that calls himself an addict, be careful what you say after those two words of I am.
I am,
because that's God. And God is inside us.
Yeah.
And when people are afraid to say, oh, I am God. And it's like, now you get to see where the real narcissists come out. Because when you become the God, or it has to be the way, that's your mind saying, it's my perspective, it's my story. And now all those neurochemicals are, you're not really healed yet at that point, because you're still trying to be something. Just be.
Yes.
Like, I am. Just be.
No, that's an interesting perspective on it. So like it's almost like metaphysical poison or something. Because, and the shame for me,
That's it.
it was shame about past relationship, like that I had become attached to a person that I was just ashamed to be attached to in the past. And it had carried forward into my future. It was like something, it wasn't, I don't know. It took me a while to even acknowledge what shame is. Like I didn't really know what it felt like. And then I started to realize, all of the regret that I had about this past relationship was basically a form of shame.
Yeah.
And then it was infecting my life basically. And the feeling for me is like, I don't know how, it took me a long time, like I said, to articulate it, much less to learn how to let it go or process it. And the Cambo journey, I didn't expect it to be emotional at all. I thought it was just a physiological thing. But in detoxifying the body in a really acute way, there came a moment where I was like, I literally felt like shame was coming out of my mouth as I threw up.
Yeah.
And it felt amazingly relieving.
Yeah. I had fear drooling out of my mouth when I was on the 5-MeO, and I was completely lucid because I did it the first time, and the 5-MeO kicked my butt. And it showed me my personal death, which is pretty common amongst people that fight it. So I learned how to let go on psychedelics, but I also learned how to let go and surrender through my faith of Christ.
Yes.
So like that story of a man going on a cross, to me, that's metaphysical, neurological, metaphorical,
Yes.
theological.
Yes.
Like you can say all the different things, but really to me, my faith, I was like, I'll be damned. Jesus was trying to tell us how to let go. Because in that moment of surrender, that's when the whole energetic exchanged from, he was literally dying. When I went into his body on the 5, I felt the shame of the world. I felt so much shame, and I had this one tear that literally stayed on my face. And the crazy part of this experience was, because for people that have never done these, you're in it, but you're out of it. You're in that. I knew where I was.
Yeah.
And the two ladies that were holding my hands in Mexico overlooking the water, one was like this pretty Latino girl she held space for more special forces, more CIA, more FBI guys than anyone that will ever know. And she had this look about her like she was forgiven. Kind of reminded me of Mary Magdalene. And on this side is this a little bit older, weathered faced lady, and she was calling herself a witch, but she was saying, I'm a good witch. And I'm going, I didn't know back then, but after reading The Mortality Key, I understand the term witch is something very subjective to those that are in control. And so these two ladies, as soon as I resisted the urge to cry and that tear stayed on my face and I was drooling spit, but they both started weeping. And at that moment, I remember looking out and just seeing the shame. Like here's this man who died for the shame and the sin of the world. All this shame. Like sin it's shame. It's just things that we shame. So I'm like watching that unfold. And then all of a sudden, as I surrendered, as I exhaled, wham, this light hits my chest. My chest shoots up. They start crying. The people in the room start crying. And I'm going, oh my God, this is happening. I felt like from shame to love, like like a lightning bolt.
And then surrendered.
And then I'm like thinking the story is that he surrendered, took on the shame of the world, love hits him, and now we get the Holy Spirit. Yes. Which people don't like to talk about because they only talk about these characterized people in a story, and they don't like to talk about the third part, which is the Holy Spirit. And I'm going, you can call it spirit, you can call it chi. To me, it's LOVE. It's just energy. Yeah. It's all energy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's very astrophysically practical, right? E equals MC squared. It is all energy, right? According to the most advanced mathematics that we know of, reality is energy, right? Even matter is basically low frequency or frozen energy. And so one of the best definitions I've heard for spirit that hopefully bridges kind of the theological and the scientific, it's just a pattern that propagates independent of substrate. So it's a wave basically moving through all different substrates, right? Whether it's informational, energetic, biological. And so it's almost like a word that is a testament to the connectivity between all things. So spiritual doesn't have to be this like woo-woo, transcendent, elsewhere, supernatural thing. I think it just kind of is the fluid, dynamic nature of reality, that it's all energy and it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Everything you do affects everything, basically.
Yeah.
And for me, the Christ story is obviously profound and at the bedrock of Western civilization, right? He's responsible for creating the individual as we know him now as like the primary legal unit and moral unit. And I think sin could be usefully described as, if Christ is this perfect standard for being human, right? It's like he's the template, he's the ideal, right? He's the perfection of human consciousness. We call it Christ consciousness oftentimes. Right. Any deviation from that is sin, basically. And that's why it's impossible for us not to sin, because no human can, it's an archetypal story, right? That we can't we can't be as perfect as the archetype ever. So therefore we're always sinful, but it's accepting that sinful nature and trying to reconcile ourselves to it, and then try to deviate less from the standard. So imitating Christ more, treating other people as if they were Christ. These are like the behavioral patterns that unlock prosperity, innovation, everything. It's like, a loving existence.
I love that. And I think the other thing to note is the story in my head when I was in those experiences was based on my faith, which was based on the story that I've cultivated. And I understand through psychedelics how to transcend religions, because in the end, it's all story. And it's not that this story is true or that story is true. And I know Jordan Peterson gets beat up all the time about being a metaphor, somebody that believes in metaphor. And I think, I think as energy goes from hard material to the divine, to the source, as we increase energy outside of this little span of visual spectrum or hearing spectrum, we really go to source. Well, then so too should the story go from literal to more metaphor, and we should focus on the metaphor.
Yes,
and that pulls us up all together. And I can sit here, if somebody was a Muslim or a Jew or an atheist or woo, I don't care I want to hear the story, because I know I'm looking for what's the metaphor in that story. And it's funny to me that Jesus was speaking in parables, and that's what caused all this confusion. And it's like back then they didn't understand it, and today people don't understand it. Yeah. And I think it really supports this one fundamental thing that I gained out of reading the Bible, and this is from the Old Testament, so that kind of includes the Jewish faith and some of the Muslim faith too, is that there's nothing new under the sun. It's in Ecclesiastes, who was supposedly the most wealthiest man ever, the most intelligent man ever, yet he died broken and alone, and he wrote it in Ecclesiastes, and he said it was all for nothing. And nothing is new under the sun. And I'm going, that's it. If we learn story, we can gain so much information and apply it to what's happening right now, today. But nothing is new under the sun. Like, humans are still animals, and that's what people forget in theology. I have fangs. I can kill. We can be the best species on the planet or the worst. And that's what Carl Jung was talking about.
It is a choice, and I do think that's why we need role models, right? That's what I think. Even you could strip out all the theology of Christ, and just when you understand this, I really like Rene Girard's work on mimetic desire. He puts like an anthropological frame around Christ, that basically humans are very imitative. This is what we do. This is how we learn. Basically, we imitate from, an infant can imitate facial expressions like 24 hours out of the womb, something like that. So way before they're talking or doing anything else, they're imitating. And so we all imitate all the time. Our personalities become like an amalgam of all the personalities of people we interact with. And it's not a one-to-one. It's typically like if you find someone inspiring, or, they can be influential through things they say or what they do, that you tend to imitate those people more, people that are more successful in whatever dimension you're trying to be successful in.
If you're aware.
If you're aware. or it's an unconscious process if you're
Yeah.
unaware. But
Yeah.
basically, so Rene Girard throws light on this whole thing, and he's like, that's why you have to have a Christ, right? There has to be this ultimate imitation worthy figure
Sure.
for people to emulate themselves after.
Yes.
And that's why I think, you could get into like Richard Dawkins' theory of memes, like it's just this idea that, love thy neighbor as thyself and love God above all else. We are encoding ourselves or acculturating ourselves to act a certain way. And it doesn't have to go that direction. We could go back towards animality. We are animals, but we're animals that are like pulling ourselves out of our animality and towards something, towards our humanity, basically. And I think to do that, you really do need these figures like Christ, like Buddha,
Right.
like Muhammad, whatever it is. All different wisdom traditions have different figures, but it's not an option and it's not a fairy tale. It's something we actually really need to encode our behaviors.
Well, there lies the power of story. I recently got a master's in my fine arts for storytelling. I didn't know why I was getting it. I wasn't doing it to go direct a feature film in Hollywood, although that might be a product of following my passions and this innate voice that was saying, go learn story. And I'm like thinking, well, I did intelligence in the SEAL teams. I know medicine, trauma medicine, better than most people because I was a trauma medic that wrote curriculum for TCCC and, did all these things. I look at story as that's how this thing works.
Yeah.
It works off
100%.
story. It's how we manipulate people. It's how we, advance humanity.
It's how we
collect information and disseminate it to the future generations. That's why I believe
your
psychedelics,
identity is a story too.
the whole thing is a story.
Yeah.
The whole thing. Yeah. And I think when you start to interweave the language between neuroscience and quantum physics and theology or religion and belief systems and story, you go, oh, wait. So in order to really heal myself or change or advance my story or to, people look at either healing or performance. So I don't care where you're at, but you got to do both in the same. You got to change your damn story. And that starts on, the internal story we tell ourselves about our self-worth.
Yeah.
And that self-worth thing is what the way we feel about ourselves. And so if we know now that every thought is connected to a feeling, a memory is connected to an emotion. And so when we're telling the story, we're literally reprogramming the same neurochemistry that we did when we got hurt 5 years ago when my girlfriend left me or I lost my business or, I did this bad thing, caused shame. Whoa. So I always tell people, like I said earlier, like if I'm dealing with somebody who's addicted to something or someone's looking at to change their life, I go, your enemy is shame.
Yeah.
Don't do anything to cause shame.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mission, go take it, but it's so profound, the linkage between how we say in the mind what story is and what neurochemistry is, what, theology is. They all are the wraparound story.
There's a blending.
Yeah. And I know we're kind of dwelling on these. I know we have some stuff to cover, but the one story that comes to mind more than most when I'm speaking about my story is what Joseph Campbell constructed called the hero's journey, where a man or a girl has to leave the place of home off to set a mission. What's the mission? And then he needs something that has really high stakes in order for that person to leave. Because they're usually in the beginning of the story, they're usually not for it. And then they go, oh wait, I have to do this or else this happens. You go on your mission. All is great for a while, middle of the second act. And then all of a sudden, rising conflict, all the way till you reach rock bottom. All is lost, end of the second act. And people really don't care about what you do before that. They care about what you do after you reach your rock bottom. That's what people are looking at.
Yeah.
And for me, I was fortunate enough to be a SEAL and receive these modalities that helped me rewrite the story in my heart and in my brain. And when I did it, I said, okay, well, I'm a medic. I need to help my brother out. So we get real good at making things better.
Yeah.
And then we just started to learn this wonderful world of integration.
Yeah.
And that starts before the medicine. And so now I'm like, we got all these SEALs and spec ops guys and really just guys that know how to figure stuff out. We just want to make it better. And then you look at, you know, all the creative art stuff, like that's part of those three functional, you know, things in the brain. It's awareness, intention, and creativity. So if we can gear our life towards creating, and like, whether that's like with the chickens, you know, creating this ecosystem here, for people in Miami, like, dude, that's a healthy brain.
Yes, be engaging and, well, that's imitating God, I think, right? If God is the creator, then when we engage in creative acts, we are imitating that natural, the nature of reality almost. Reality is this infinitely creative thing. The farm at Okefenokee is a revolutionary new regenerative agricultural community. It features an 8,000 tree olive orchard, which they use to make their own olive oil, as well as a very large pecan orchard. All the animals on the farm are heritage animals, with some varieties over 100 years old and others thousands of years old. Fresh eggs are produced daily by the farm's chickens. Also, there are over 1,000 beehives that pollinate the over 200 heirloom fruits and vegetables and provide honey to all the residents. The farm makes its own molasses, unrefined sugar, herbs, and spices. The farm also features an herbal apothecary and a commercial kitchen. These are just a few reasons why the farm is the healthiest place on earth. To learn more about the healthiest place on earth, go to okefarm.com and use discount code BREEDLOVE for $21,000 off custom cabin pricing. Again, to learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and be sure to tell them I sent you. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. So you are a former Navy SEAL, and you've become a mental health ambassador for veterans. Focused on very specific modalities. So if we're talking about the story of self, how has your story of self changed on this journey, and where did you begin, and who have you become today?
Wow, thanks. That's a good question. So the end of that hero's journey is you come home and you share what you learn. Mm-hmm. That's the whole arc.
Right.
And so for me, when I started, I was raised by a very competitive natured Midwestern family outside of Detroit, Michigan. I had an older brother who was 21 months older and a younger sister about the same. And we knew sports. My dad was a gym teacher. My mom was a teacher, special ed teacher. She was a great athlete. And we just, like, on snow days, we were going to school with dad and I was playing gym. I was in gym class, a whole day. Like, this is the best. So, and then I was an athlete. I was a two-time all-state soccer player and a state champion wrestler, and then went on to play collegiate soccer, went to the NCAA semifinals my freshman year. We had a Cinderella story. And then I wanted to be a pediatrician my whole life, like since I was 5. And that wasn't in the cards. I don't think I was ready to focus and do that. Parents got a divorce when I was in the 8th grade, and we were taught you sweep everything under the rug, you smile, and you keep winning, and just smile through it.
Just bottle it up.
Oh, that was it. That was it. It was none of that. No therapy, none of that. So there was a lot of unprocessed wounds, but I know now that everything that I thought was like against me or considered like negative experiences. There was no such thing. It was everything God was using to get to me where I'm going now and to where we're going in the near future, which is pretty cool. So I've learned how to take all the things in my life and go, this might have been a hard experience or an unjust experience, but in reality, it's exactly what I needed to get to where I'm going. If I can see the value and be grateful for all things, even those that hurt me. So I went on to be a SEAL after college. I told my college teammate in soccer, who was a Huey pilot at the time for the Marines, I said, I'm thinking I'm going to go in the Navy, enlist, and they'll pay back my college loans, and I'll be a pediatrician and do that. And he's like, Tom, if you go enlist in the Navy, you're going to hate your life. You're not going to do well there in that community. He goes, you need to be a SEAL. And I was like, a SEAL? And I said, that's crazy. And he said, you're crazy. And I said, you're right. And that was it. Like I watched one Discovery video. I was like, oh, that looks horrible. I'm in, I wasn't done being an athlete, to be honest. Yeah. And if I was to be 100% transparent, the identity of Tom at 23 or 22 after all these, accolades in sports and was a pretty good student. I was living in lack because I didn't know who I was. And I had a lot of fear. And what's better to feel in fear is I feel worthy. So I think for me, chasing a trident, or at least seeing if I could do it, which was go to man camp, see if you can do it, right? Measure yourself up, was really that. It was fulfilling an identity that I needed. I thought I would feel safe if I had a trident on my chest.
So that competitive upbringing, just taking it to its culmination, basically, as far as you could take it.
Yeah, I remember before I left for the Navy after college, I was sitting around a bonfire in Ludington, Michigan with my family, a bunch of cousins and aunts and uncles, and everybody's drinking like pretty hard, like growing up. And somebody found out that I was going to try out for the SEALs, and I remember my aunt and uncle, they started laughing. And it was like that laugh, like, are you kidding me? You think you can do that? And I'll never forget that, because when it got real hard in Hell Week, you can't feel your legs, your hip flexors are seized up, your pain is like you are hallucinating by Wednesday. We do 140 hours, 212 miles with a boat on your head. You're hypothermic most of the week. Your skin's rotting off. The chafing is the worst out of everything. And if you have a reason to quit, your mind's going to go there. And you get that 1,000-yard stare, you stop eating, and you're going to quit. Wow. So it's like justifying in your head for most of the week. And for me, it was like, I don't care what they do. I'm not going home and face my family, tell them they were right. Like my ego was too strong.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's why I went home and told them. And my aunt said something to me, like, she's like, you're the only person in our family that's ever done something like that. And I'm like what? And they're like something like famous. And I was like, it's not famous. Like, I'm just a guy, going to go jump, run, shoot things and get paid for it, So for me, it was like that. It was that longing for an identity.
Oh, interesting.
And I think it really was a lot of people. As an instructor, I saw it in a lot of students. After 16 years, I saw that same kind of thing. It's no different than someone joining a gang. Yeah. Or anything. Right. It's the same psychological thing. Seeking belonging and affirmation. Yeah. So as a young man, I can't speak to a young woman, but I'm pretty close. I'm pretty sure there's a value system. And that story that gets played to a woman is be the princess. The warrior comes and sweeps you up and you're the prize, right? Yeah. So now what we got? A society of women thinking that they have to look like this to be the prize. Right. And I'm going, well, that's a problem, right? How many body imaging problems we have for females, right? Yeah. But males, young men, it's like, I need to be strong enough, smart enough, and good enough to prove my worth. And I'm scared because that's a scary world. And I know who I am. I don't know. As a kid, you're thinking inside.
Sure.
So like my exposure to sports, and I would be the kid hiding under the bleachers in a wrestling tournament at 5 years old, playing with my WWF figures. My dad would be like, "Get out of here, you got to wrestle." And I'm like, "I don't want to." And then, come in there and grab me. And I was forced into it and got burnt out of wrestling and all that. But, those exposures, I know now that had like neurological, programming design,
So what is it?
Good.
So you then become a SEAL. You obviously get through.
Yeah.
Is it BUDS? Is that what they call it?
Yeah. Basic underwater demolition SEAL training.
And then you said, do you become a medic in the SEALs?
So we go through a second 6 months of SEAL qualification where they teach you more of the tactical stuff. And then because of my background, I was like, I need to be a medic because I'm pretty good at medicine. Yeah. So I went another 7 months-ish at Fort Bragg, did their, at the time it was called the SOCM medic, but it's all kind of changing. So we get a little bit more training because it's funny because I was pre-med in college, did the cadaver classes, did all that. And then when I went right from there to the SEAL or the Special Forces medic course, and I graduated, taught my class because I had all that experience. But I remember how fast they deliver the information. We were doing 4 college level science courses in like a fourth of the time, 6 college level courses in a fourth of the time.
Wow.
And then you go into the trauma lanes where it's hands-on, and then you have the K-prines and they do the ketamine, and we work on live tissue, which offends some people, but that's how you save lives, is working on.
What did you say about ketamine? So they give ketamine to.
So it's called live tissue training, and we use K-prines, goats.
Ah, okay.
But we euthanize them and make sure they're doing it humanely.
Gotcha.
And then we work on live bullet holes and amputations and all kinds of stuff. So that's how you learn.
Yeah.
And it saves lives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It could be a little, to some people. But so after that, then I rejoined the SEAL team, back with the SEAL team at SEAL Team 2. I did 2 deployments there, one to Africa, one to Iraq, and then came back, went to BUD/S to be instructor, deployed with an intelligence team to PACOM, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and then did a deployment to Afghanistan and went back as a advanced instructor to teach some tactical surveillance operations.
Gotcha. And then obviously through all of those experiences, I'm assuming you gained some emotional scarring going through a lot of that. And then what takes you into this mental health ambassadorship route? Yeah,
it's like a lot of wear and tear, living in survival mode, really. Just, if anybody, you stay in it long enough and you're like, how do I get out of this? I don't feel good. And I want to get out, but you keep getting those reenlistment checks, and it's hard to break, hard to make changes.
Sure.
So I think after 16 years, my brain I got diagnosed PTSD, went to the NICO, which is the National Intrepid Center of Excellence. It's the largest brain imaging center in the world. It's the gold standard to treat PTSD, TBI, and at Walter Reed. And my friend was one of the directors there. He's a friend now. He's a colleague now, but he's one of the best psychologists to come out of Naval Special Warfare, which is he was a psychiatrist for the Special Forces. He went down to the Mission Within and saw one treatment of his 5 patients, and he wept and he said, "Oh my God, we're doing it wrong." And he saw these guys heal.
What were they doing wrong?
Ibogaine. Well, he was saying in terms of like psychiatry and all the way they treat mental health, and particularly PTSD.
Which was what? Just like traditional
SSRIs, polypharma.
Gotcha.
There was no new treatments, drug developments in 20 years for for PTSD, TBI. They were all the same drugs. There's never been one like revolutionary thing until psychedelics came. And so my own healing journey, I showed up to the medicine, rock bottom. I had an ex-wife that did some things to me, pretty shitty, took my kids, played the system, and just wrote a bunch of lies and ended up not even telling me who she was, like her age and everything. It was Hollywood director girl and just real narcissist. But I look at that and I go, I lost 4 kids in 10 days, an approved medical retirement, and all my, identity. And it was like, the only thing that saved me was my faith, my support system. I was in a men's group with one of my best friends, Mike Sweeney from the Kansas City Royals, Jim Caviezel, Philip Rivers, all these great guys that have around me. And they lifted me up. And at that time is when I found the medicine, and I was still going to church and doing that thing. And learning how to heal from a broken heart it can kill you. Yeah, it really can, especially when you take away a guy's identity. Yeah, and all those things, I look now and go, it wasn't me losing. It was me, God, going, I'm taking these from you because I got something big for you. Wow. And you really have to figure out, you have to know who you are before you can take on this next mission I have. Right. And that's when I learned, like, my true identity is the I am. It's whoever I want to be. It's being the best version of me. It's being the worst version of me. Hopefully I'm not that anymore, but it's like this journey to recreate yourself. We're not supposed to know who the hell we are, in my opinion. Right. We're supposed to go find it. Yeah. And it's supposed to develop and create along the journey. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because why would we limit ourselves to this one moment in time when we have all these new things that we could do?
I mean, that's our primary advantage, is that we're so hyper adaptive. What they say that most animals adapt to their environment, but man adapts his environment to himself. That's our magic power, right? We've got speech and technology, and we can create a habitable situation basically anywhere. So individually, obviously we go through a lot of changes, and I'm sorry to hear that. So your kids were basically taken from you overnight, it sounds like.
Yeah, Father's Day 2019 was the last time I had a word about them. Wow. And I still pay $3,400 a month in child support in California.
And you don't get to see them?
Not a word.
So sorry.
But it's, I only share that because I want people to understand that shitty things happen to good people and bad people. Yeah. And it's how we deal with it. Yeah. And if in that fight, and this is what's so interesting, is I've been a fighter my whole life. Yeah. First fight I ever fought was when some second grader was making fun of my younger sister. I was in kindergarten. I just drilled him right in the face. My grandpa was a naval champion in the Pacific Fleet. He was a professional boxer, and I grew up as a wrestler. I was a fighter. Yeah. A SEAL, whatever. Yeah. But one of the things that's really just super profound in wrestling or fighting in life is that sometimes we can't always go forward. We can't always win. No. Sometimes you got to lose to win. Yeah. There's a lot of this talk about, if you want to be successful, you got to fail faster. Yeah. Get good at what it feels like to fail neurochemically. Yeah. And sit in that for a while. And I guarantee you, you're going to come back a lot stronger, and you're going to probably get over all those fears, because you don't get over it unless you experience it. For sure. It's,
our wounds generate our wisdom, and it's where all the information is. It's where all the learning is in failure. And learning to, I think, deal with it in an emotionally positive way as much as is possible. Obviously it's easier said than done. I had similar situation, maybe not the same, but my daughter was taken pretty much overnight, and that was, it's a heart ripper. Someone you've been with their entire life, taking care of them every moment, all of a sudden they're just gone, and you can't access them, you can't see them, you can't talk to them. I've been through some things in my life, but that was, I think, the hardest thing I had been through up until that point. Yeah, because it actually hit me where it really hurt. You know, so I feel for you on that.
Oh,
one.
thank
I really
you.
do.
It's been my superpower, and I always say this, and I analyze it in my head ad nauseum. You know, the great ones are those that overcome great loss.
Yes.
And there's a lot worse stories out there than me. I mean, I work with people when they tell me their trauma. Yeah. I'm just like, I don't even want to act like, you know, I had a pretty easy life compared to some people. Yeah. But it doesn't really matter, because when it happens to you, the brain works off of perspective. So people, like we talked earlier, people, whether they like it or not, they are the protagonists in their journey. Yeah. And if you're not, and I took a lot of writing classes, no story sells if that protagonist is not driving himself or herself. Yeah. And you have to be your own hero. You cannot wait for some other protagonist to come and rescue you. Right. And I think that is like, helped me a lot to understand that, you know, like, most people treat themselves like shit because they don't see themselves as worthy. And sometimes that's brought on to something that happened to them or something they did to others. And that's not who they are now. And so if we're living in the past, how are we supposed to become the person that we were created to be? Yeah. Not just for ourselves, but for society, for our kids, for those that we work with.
Yeah, if you hold on to a static definition of yourself in the past or from the past, how can you grow and change? Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 Bitcoin a few years from now? Bitcoin mining is a tried and true strategy for accumulating Bitcoin. Over a 2 to 4 year time frame, successful miners have consistently accumulated more Bitcoin than they otherwise would with a traditional dollar cost average strategy. Blockware's mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin from your laptop. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. Plus, with Blockware's one-of-a-kind mining marketplace, you can buy and sell live Bitcoin miners with just a few strokes of the keyboard. In this marketplace, buyers get to purchase live machines at vetted facilities, enabling them to mine with zero lead time. And sellers get the opportunity to liquidate their machines and hosting contracts at will. This means you can mine Bitcoin with zero long-term commitment and high liquidity on your mining rigs. Blockware will even cover your miner's energy bill for the first week of each of your mining rigs when you sign up at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's 1 free week of Bitcoin mining at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. You mentioned Ibogaine. So I guess what was you went on a non-traditional medical journey, I guess, to heal yourself from PTSD and other things. TBI. Can you tell me about that? Like, how did you get introduced to these medicines? What are these medicines? What was your experience on them? And then I guess ultimately you would eventually take them out into the world.
Yeah. So day 1, week 1 of SEAL training, they teach you pass the effing word. Pass the word.
Pass the word.
Pass the word. And so what I'm doing is I'm passing the word.
What does that mean?
It means share information.
Just communicate.
It's Paul Revere. Okay. It's hey, we're getting shot at over here. Yeah. Pass the information. That's how you operate on a battlefield. So like kind of what we're doing as a community right now is telling people like, look, the only reason we got this medicine is because we were SEALs and Special Forces guys. There's a lot of people in our country that want to donate their own money and use these nonprofits to provide treatments that we can't get right here in the States. And so for me, this is like a sense of obligation, not just because I'm trying to be a good person, but because there's true value to this. And if we can heal 60 to 80% of our own community, what does that say to the rest of the world and the other communities that are suffering? And so how I showed up, I did the 5-MeO DMT first. It was a horrible experience. I didn't know how to let go or surrender. It was a fight. I locked up, but my faith eventually allowed me to surrender. And
what is when you say 5-MeO DMT, can you tell people what that is?
Sure. Yeah. It's this, they extract it from a toad, Sonoran desert toad they call it bufo. And it's got these glands and they literally secrete this poison or venom and they dry it out. And then you will dose it and smoke it out of like a pipe. They can make it into a vape now and do those things too. But essentially it's the world's strongest psychedelic on the planet. And it's like a rocket ship if you're not ready to let go. And if you fight at all, it will do some pretty gnarly experiences. One of them kind of metaphorically, it shows you an experience of like your personal fears. So like death, personalized. Not always, but that's why it's so important to teach people how to let go and get in that state of receivership, because it's a hell of a lot better way to get reprogrammed than fighting it. But that will teach you something too.
Sure.
So there's no really bad experience. But there is definitely an easier one. And so after 6 months later, I went down to Mexico to the Mission Within. Dr. Martin Polanco, who's a friend of mine, he's going to go down as the doctor who healed the SEALs, to bringing this one particular protocol into a 3-day retreat, which was Ibogaine and a 2 days or a day off, and then 5-MeO DMT. So Ibogaine comes from a shrub in Africa, in Gabon, Africa, called iboga. And it came to the United States around 1960 when a professor, Howard Lutzoff from NYU, was addicted to cocaine, I believe, or heroin. And his buddy went on a retreat there and came back with this vial of it and said, these people, these tribe down in Gabon I watched it. I was like part of it. Like they say it cures all these. So he tried it and it cured him in 1960. And then him and his wife, who I met, Norma Lutzoff, they were on basically from 1960 forward, hey, we have the cure for opioid addiction. And they were like, get out of my face. Then a lady from Dade Community, neuroscientist, I could see her face. She's going to kill me. Deborah Mosh. Deborah Mosh was famous for coming up with this metabolite called cochlear ethanol, which is when you combine alcohol and cocaine together, it becomes 30% more potent and can kill you. That's what Belushi and Chris Farley and all these guys died off of. Was this combination of cocaine and alcohol. So she was here in Miami at the University of Miami, and she was getting just crazy attention. It was like she was hired by Reagan during the big cocaine flood in the early 80s. So she, in 1987, somebody came to her and said, hey, there's a thing called Ibogaine and it can cure addictions. And she's like, yeah, right. Get away from me. If I knew it, I would know it would be my world. She heard it again and she went down there and she did it. And she said, we have to study the hell out of this. So she basically jumped on from late 80s all the way. And she was kind of like the voice of reason here in Miami. And then it wasn't until the SEALs got a hold of it. And then Joe Rogan and Ed Clay, who's the stem cell guy for Joe Rogan, lives in Nashville. He got cured of it in like 2012. He had opioid addiction from fighting. he wanted to open up ibogaine centers. I think he did, and then it was no business growth, and so he went into stem cells. So, but he was really the special forces community that brought ibogaine to life. But if people in the addiction community really have known about ibogaine since the 60s.
Yeah.
So why ibogaine? Ibogaine is an alkaloid, like I said, but it's different than the way it works, like where ayahuasca or psilocybin. It turns into neuroibogaine, and the biggest thing to look at here is it literally disrupts or changes the relationship between the receptor site and opioids, like nothing they've seen before. Like heroin addicts are not having withdrawal symptoms, and that's really important because most heroin addicts I know, they try to get clean, and it is the worst experience. So painful.
It's like not even physiologically possible at some point, right? Where they have to go to the methadone clinics and whatnot.
So the statistics I've always heard was like 3% of all heroin addicts can ever recover, right? Something low. Yeah. And it was because of, and even in the conventional recovery industry, which they don't want a lot of these money making machines. They don't want this exposure of ibogaine. Yeah. But statistically, it's very hard to get off heroin. But if we have something that takes away the withdrawal symptom, and that doesn't just heal you by doing ibogaine, it literally smooths out the pathways and allows you to rebuild the pathways. So it's like now they're calling it a technology, not a medicine, because psychedelics truly don't heal you. They allow you to heal yourself. Right. When you do it with intention. Sure. And you create healthy behavior patterns. That's the work. So that's repetition. The mind works off repetition. Right. You know that. You don't have to do,
What is it? The psychedelics, that they help you reset the default mode network. Is that correct? Where it is those pathways of habit that you can basically gloss over and rebuild yourself. Yeah. Something like that.
So I love that term, the default mode network. So a way I explain it is, and LSD this is probably the best one in my opinion for that is, our default mode network is I wake up in the morning. I didn't sleep because my nervous system is not working because it's probably screwed up from the life of addiction or stress, trauma, survival, whatever the toxic energy we're in. That's your default. So you wake up, you don't know who you are. You find a feeling or an emotion, and now we associate the emotion to identity, to a memory of the past. And now we start that loop. We do the same thing every morning. We feel the same way. We get the same coffee. And now we're in a loop. We're in a default mode, right? And that's, if you put an EEG on the brain, you're going to see high beta wave spikes, which is not coherent. It's spiky, okay? When we drop the default mode, you're literally dropping our perception of threat. So a lot of people like to think of sympathetic nervous system being animal state or survival mode, and parasympathetic being restorative, calming, I'm safe mode, rest creation mode. I'm either in survival mode or creating mode. And I always say you got to feel safe to create. If you're in a team, in a corporation, and you come in going, my job's on the line. If I don't nail this, we might not nail it. Or you might be in that environment where like I drive off of that, My point is, if I feel safe, I'm going to create more. I'm going to help you more. I'm going to help others because I'm not thinking about my narcissistic person inside. And I'm going, whoa. So if we drop that ability, if we drop that default mode, then we'll actually be shifting into another operating system that's different neurochemicals, that's different response to external environment things. That's a different narrative I'm telling myself. And those things are how you build the new neural pathways, the story you tell yourself, the self-worth, all that shit has to be, it's if you can program it, you can reprogram it. Right. And it didn't happen overnight, so it ain't going to happen. You're not going to find your healing overnight. Right. It's just like do the work.
This is a great metaphor then for psychedelics, because people do often come to them looking for solutions of some kind. But what you're saying is they're more like tools that allow you to reprogram yourself. Obviously maybe not necessary unless you've perhaps, you've had PTSD or something that in cases they might be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
We can reprogram ourselves all kinds of ways,
Sure.
right? Like what we eat, our daily habits, our, meditation, whatever it is, who we spend time with. But these tools do seem extra potent in their ability to kind of debug the human brain or the human personality and then open you up for reprogramming. And so I think that's a really good framing, like a metaphorical framing for the value of these tools.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, it's not, most people hear this, and if they haven't experienced psychedelics, it's the first question is, because the brain works off perception, is, do I need these? Mm-hmm. And then I always say, I don't know. Yeah. Like, do you want change? Because I look at things as neuro change, right? What is sustained change? It can be growth or it could be death. Yeah. You're changing every day. Your cells are changing. Right. So if you're not changing, that to me is like,
when you're finished changing, you're finished.
Goes bad. Yeah. I want to be changing. Yeah. I want to be growing and shedding and creating. Yeah. And so like, that's my first question is, do you want that? Because some people don't want that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not like trying to push my perspective on anybody. It's those that want it that don't know how a way to get it. Yeah. That's that technology part. Psychedelics is nothing more than a non-descriptive amplifier. A narcissist on psychedelics is nothing but a narcissist that now becomes a false prophet, right? Yeah. And a manipulator. And if the government and the FDA and the NIH, and if we don't guide this, what's going to be created is a bunch of states going after the opioid settlement funds, and it's going to be harder for them to pull it back in. And the other thing, and this is where I'm like, my middle child syndrome comes out. Like, I'm kind of like, let's see the human experiment. Like the minute somebody receives information or has hope that there's a better way, they're going to go find that. They're going to go figure it out. Yeah. And I think we need to encourage people to do that. But at the same time, we need to encourage our government to go, hey, they're going to do that regardless. You guys take the damn initiative, pass the freaking bills so we can do the research and find out if this is going to work or it's not going to work. Yeah. Because the more you stall on this, the more they're going to keep going. And now you're going to have a problem on your hands.
Okay, you mentioned like you suffered from PTSD, traumatic brain injury. What are I assume those are probably standard injuries of guys post-military. Yeah. What other conditions are psychedelics or these modalities being used to treat in people that are exiting the service? And I guess you could also say, what are they treating more broadly?
Well, we won't know until they allow us to do the research. But if anybody gets a chance, I would highly suggest listening to the Joe Rogan podcast with Brian Hubbard, the former chairman of the Opioid Settlement Committee in Kentucky that I worked for and testified with, and former Governor Rick Perry. It was the first show that Joe put on the air, and he is a strategic asset to information. Depending on your viewpoint of the information, I guess he makes you, be an antagonist or protagonist. But I think it's important that people watch that because it really, in a beautiful way, points out the narrative of the work we've been doing to bring to light a very, very highly anticipated option to treat not only chemical dependency, not only PTSD, but anything that really truly touches the nervous system. And that means, what would microdosing iboga do to a Parkinson's or an MS patient? Or what would microdosing LSD neurologically do to somebody that's coming to terms with dementia, early dementia? What would psychedelics do if microdosed properly with the proper care to the way we eat? Because most of the way we eat is all emotional, nervous system driven. I don't eat usually because I need the calories. I eat because I'm bored. I'm tired. I'm stressed. Well, when you're in that zone, you're probably not thinking about what the hell you're eating. Right. So now that this $5 billion healthcare industry that we're probably going to be changing, hopefully with their help, is now going to expand to trillions of dollars because now you're talking about food, talking about water, talking about education, talking about faith. You're talking about there's really nowhere it doesn't touch, in my opinion.
Interesting. So I assume there's like specific conditions they're being approved to treat, right? Because these things are, if they're being
Schedule
used.
1.
Okay, so how are they being administered then? If they're being administered outside of the country, or like how? Just talk me through like how some of the guys that have been through your journey in armed services, obviously they're coming out with PTSD plus. What are they doing to treat those symptoms? Like where are they going? What are they doing? How do you approach this stuff if it's not mainstream medicine?
There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, like we talked about earlier. If somebody has a breakthrough experience riding a horse, they could heal himself of PTSD, just the connection with a horse.
Wow.
Someone writes a song in a songwriting clinic, you can heal yourself through the experience of writing music.
Wow.
There's a lot of ways we can heal. But the most effective way, in my opinion, are doing these psychedelic retreats in a controlled, safe manner. The question is, why does a service member who serves in war for our country have to leave the country they served in order to get the treatment that they deserve? That's 60 to 80% more effective, cheaper, safe.
Yeah.
Like that's the crazy part, is we have to answer that question. And why isn't the government taking responsibility? There are underground clinics and retreats that people do in the country, but for most part, Mexico is where we go. A lot of places are just south of Tijuana. So we would get in a van and I would drive Special Forces guys through the border in a white van. And it's like almost like you're doing your job again. And, you get them down there and, you spend 3 days and you've done a couple of weeks of integration and you'll have a couple on the backside. But that model is kind of what we've been doing. It's not sustainable because we're driving it through philanthropic efforts, nonprofits collect donations. And there's a bottleneck because awareness is getting out.
Yeah.
So now you got this problem where just be doing this podcast, people are going to reach out to Beyond in Cancun that I work for and I advise for. They're the number one ibogaine clinic in the world right now. They have they went from 3 nurses to 23 ICU board certified nurses. They went from 1 medical doctor to 9. They have anesthesiologists, and now doctors are going, I want to learn that. And so now there's these places that, and I'm really good friends with the owners, Tom Fiegel and Talia, where great minds of healers are coming to go, what's the model look like when we finally do get approved in the United States? To be able to help develop those clinics, I'm like, I get to do what? And that really the model is 1/3 luxury retreat. Why? Because they want to feel safe. They want to feel valuable. Yeah. That helps with that messaging thing, right? If I sleep on 5-star linens in a comfortable bed, guess what that does to me? I feel good. Yeah. 1/3 luxury retreat, 1/3 functional hospital. So you can take care of other things. You can address other issues. If that's what's so exciting is all the other medicine, like the research that's going to be done from all the other types of medicine with this factor in it is that it's game changer. Right. Then the last one is you got to address mental health. Mental health, in my opinion, should just be part of health.
Sure.
And the reality is that it's our nervous system that controls the way we think, we move, and we think and feel.
Completely agree. I'd mentioned to you earlier, I have struggled with like gut inflammation problems. I have an autoimmune condition. I know when my gut is flared up and I'm inflamed, all of my mental health is out of whack, right? Like my attitude is bad, my patience is short, my attention span is short. It's mental health. It's psychophysiological, right? There's not this bright line between like mental and physical. Like they are very tightly integrated. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-key vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians. none of which have unilateral control over your keys. Your funds are fully auditable on chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only move or be withdrawn at your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Bitcoin is money, and as the price continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, insurance, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security or accessibility. Schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team to learn more at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. As one of my business mentors once told me, the job of the boss is to eliminate confusion. The best antidote for confusion is access to truth, which brings clarity to business decision-making and thus optimizes the drive toward future business goals. Over 41,000 businesses have future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP system, which brings accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make decisions quickly and effectively. If I was still a CFO, NetSuite is undoubtedly the ERP system I would use in my business. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, you can download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/whatismoney. This guide is packed with useful insights and is free for you at netsuite.com/whatismoney. Again, that's netsuite.com/whatismoney. I guess people that are listening to this, most people that are listening to this are not armed forces, right? But they have other issues I'm sure they're dealing with. Are there other things that people are looking to heal when they seek out these type of modalities or these types of clinics? Like, what are the most common things you see people seeking these tools out for?
Right. So I love how you said that integration of the metaphysical, the physical, and the emotional, like they are one, and that language is neurochemistry. That's what links the feelings and the emotions together. The language of psychedelics is going from healing to performance, from healing trauma and addiction to health and optimization of the nervous system. Because if I call it health and optimization of the nervous system, and what does that mean? Well, it means you're going to have an experience. You might call it a trip, but it's really neurochemistry happening, and you're looking at it as a trip or a story that's being played.
Right.
The health and optimization also covers all the chemical dependencies and all those things, all the trauma. It's optimizing the nervous system. A lot of people are like, well, what's trauma? I'm like, I don't know, anything that you've experienced that it has affected your mental state or your physical state because it hasn't changed or been addressed or processed. That to me is like, that's the connection.
Yeah.
So it's like, whoa, what's the source? The source is the nervous system.
Yeah.
If you treat that thing, get it feeling safe for a while, learning how to create my environment, learning new habits, learning to be grateful, be creative, witness the awe of nature and observe.
Right.
You're probably gonna see some benefits physically.
So it can really be any type of physical or mental ailment at all. People it's possible that they can benefit from using these tools for almost any condition. I go back to, E equals MC squared. We've known this for a long time. It's all energy. But the other thing that I go back to is what Tesla said about, if you want to understand the universe, learn to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yeah.
And that our emotional states, like it's scientifically proven, right? When you're in a state of joy, you're vibrating, your brain is at a higher frequency, versus a state of grief or anger or sadness, you're at a lower frequency.
Yeah.
So there's something energetic about these old tools that I don't know, help put you into a higher frequency, and then maybe understand a little bit more about how we actually operate.
Yeah.
It seemed to be really useful for kind of like dissolving people's materialist viewpoint of the world.
The ego.
Yeah, I think it's all ego. They think it's all chemicals, or
I heard this incredible clip of a podcast on Instagram, and this gentleman, I forgot his name, is a pretty well-known guy. He said, the funny thing about society is people would rather be right than be free. And he said, neurochemically, it feels better to be right and the ego be right than it is to actually be set free. And I'm like, whoa, like, ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. But that melting of the ego, I look at the ego as it is the nervous system. It is our mind. And the funny thing is, like, you cannot kill the ego, because you are the ego. You are the nervous system. It is you. It's not you. It's the system that you are creating.
Right.
Life is creating, you're observing. That's the system. It's not you. You're a soul, or that's what I call it. Like you're an entity.
Yes. You're whatever that part of you is. It can always take a step back and look at that other part of yourself, the observer, right?
Yeah.
And the ego, something like, it's a necessary part of what we are, but it's kind of like that saying that the mind is an excellent servant but a terrible master.
Yes.
It's when you let that ego or mind be in charge, or when you think you know it all, or when you think you know, period. That's why Socrates said, the only thing I know is I know nothing at all, right? It is that position of radical humility, I think, is the right way to approach reality, because reality is hyper complex, and even things you think you know can be subject to change. So it seems to be when people hold on, right? They hold on to some story, they hold on to some static structure that they think is unshakable and unchangeable. When they become dogmatic, even in a religious sense, that's when you get problems, right? There's a refusal to adapt.
Yep.
And when you refuse to adapt, you become out of touch with reality that's always changing.
Yep.
So
it's amazing. It truly is amazing, like where we're at, and being able to say we get to witness this, like these changes. And you're in a very an incredible world with Bitcoin. And I think coming here, I was like, I'm in this alternative modality world, as you are too. And we have this alternative source of currency, which is energy.
Yeah.
Right. My currency, I'm like, I never had a lot of money. I have great relationships in my life. Mm-hmm. That's my currency, is my bond with my people that I've encountered.
Yeah.
But like, there's all kinds of currency in our world. And I think we're going to see changes that happen so fast, which is a little scary, because that comes uncertainty with change.
Yeah.
Change is scary.
Of course.
I think change for the human mind is the scariest thing on the planet, without knowing.
Yeah, but again,
can be.
No, it is. But if you get this part of this work, right, is kind of taking the metacognitive step backward, and you come to the realization that everything's impermanent.
Yes.
Right. So if you're scared of change, well, then you're scared of reality, bro. Like,
that's right.
You're scared of being alive. You're scared of breathing. You're scared of moving. No man steps into the same river twice. It's not the same river. It's not the same man. It's like the reality is impermanence and then interdependence, right? Sure, we're individuals, but we're also co-creating one another all the time. We're interacting with one another all the time. And so relationships are extremely valuable. It seems to me like this ability to, maybe this is the connection between psychedelics and Bitcoin, rewriting narratives, right? We call it the Bitcoin rabbit hole, but it's like it's almost like getting unplugged from the matrix, right? As you realize Well, for instance, the most desired asset in the world today, the US dollar, is simultaneously the biggest scam in the history of the world in terms of purchasing power, time, energy stolen from people through the counterfeiting of currency. Well, if that's not a pathology, then I don't know what is, right? People are pursuing this big scam or this big lie. And the Bitcoin, we call it taking the orange pill. It's kind of like the Matrix metaphor where Neo gets the red or the blue pill. We call it the orange pill. You realize, oh, wait, the world is a simulation. You wake up in Zion, you see people being used as batteries, right? These are the taxpayers. And you're like, oh shit, I now have to recreate my whole narrative about what is real and what's not. If the dollar is complete bullshit, and I've been pursuing that my whole life, spending most of my waking hours pursuing this thing, and that's a scam, what else have I taken for granted? What else have I been deceived on? So there's this whole narrative rewrite process, and it sounds like that's connected to the psychedelic process, 100%. Right? You take this psychedelic, you have this idea of who you are and what your goals are, and yourself is a story you tell yourself about yourself. Yeah. And then the psychedelic dissolves that, helps you see things from a different perspective. And you're put into this position where you get to re-author your own story and your role in history. And so it might be kind of a tenuous connection, but I do see there's a lot of interest in the Bitcoin community in psychedelics. I think people trying to improve themselves and whatnot. And I'm not sure if it goes the other direction yet, but I'm sure it will.
I love that. And I think hopefully there'll be a source of paying for services in the psychedelic community through Bitcoin, because it's going to sustain more practices. Look, like I said, people are going to do this. They're going to run retreats. They're going to do this with the government's permission or not. The minute that we introduce information into the ether that this stuff can actually heal neurological symptoms, guess what? People are going to go. Sure. They're not waiting. Right. Because that's what humans do.
Because it works.
Yeah. And I think, I'm a very libertarian at heart. Like I never was into politics until I started supporting Bobby Kennedy. Yeah. And I never saw it like that, because I just was a soldier, I was a SEAL. And but now I see it as I'm becoming I've liberated myself from who I thought I was. I've changed my life. I found an incredible mate, and that was all product of me starting to love myself, and build that identity, that self-worth. She found me. I didn't. That's the way. It's like it's awesome. Like this
your
is
vibe
really
attracts your tribe, right?
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Yeah. But then I'm like, okay, obviously not all humans are the same. Liberating people means you don't have control on them.
Sure.
And then you gotta look at that and go, okay, where do we take this? And the only way to steer it is with intention. That's why I'll say it to I'm dead is intention steers your ship. Yeah. So if my intention is to serve and be good energy and bring good news to people, then that's what I'm going to do. And the byproduct will be, because of that intention, the energy, the sacrifice, the loving without fear, all those things are the byproduct of my intention. And I do want to liberate people, because I think psychedelics isn't for everybody.
Sure.
Crypto isn't for everybody, but for those that are not happy, this gives them an opportunity to make changes in their life. And I think those people will be rewarded.
Let me ask you this. So have you thought about the connection between, let's say, financial position and or money and mental health? Because it does seem what a lot of people struggle with is just getting by, right? Making ends meet. I think there was a study done a couple of years ago that I want to say it was 50% of Americans couldn't come up with $400 for an emergency expense, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're living on that kind of economic edge, that if one thing goes wrong, and things go wrong every day in life, and you don't have the means to cover that, I mean, I can't even imagine what anxiety that puts in people. So what is what do you think about the relationship between mental health and financial insecurity? Because then that gets straight to all the money printing and all the scamming that the government's doing to people. It's putting people into positions to have mental health crises.
Yeah, I call it distraction ops. When you're distracted by survival, you're not taking over the throne. You're not charging the gates. You're just really occupied with living in a state of survival. And there's no coincidence that we have had a flooding of fentanyl into our streets. Cities like Memphis, Tennessee, where, I live in Nashville, so I see it. I see the devastation across Appalachia. That's not a new narrative. That happened after a war in 1860s. But the reality is there's population control, because if everything is built on the economy, right? And they're looking for margins. These people don't care if Johnny Brown with his 3 kids are in that. They don't see it. They're detached from that reality. All they see is numbers. And I think we're entering a very turbulent time in this late stage capitalism thing that we've created, where it's not just national, it's international.
I think that is definitely the wrong term, though. I'm sorry, I have to hit that one back.
Go ahead.
Because it's late stage central banking.
There you go.
Basically.
Better.
Because I don't know if we'll ever get the word capitalism back, because people have assigned this world to capitalism. Like, we're not even 1/4 capitalists, because the money itself is communist. Central banking is literally measure number 5 out of Marx's manifesto to the Communist Party, a state monopoly on cash and credit. So our money is literally Marxist communist. I'm not making it up. It's not an exaggeration. It's in the book from 1848. So if money's 1/2 of every transaction, we're not even 1/2 capitalist at best, not to mention all the regulations and healthcare and banking and insurance and all this stuff. So like we're a socialist nightmare all over the world. Like the word capitalist, I don't know that we'll ever save it, but we've never seen it either. So sorry, I have to just...
No, I love that. I'm glad that you caught that.
I hate when people say that, because it's like they're giving up on capitalism.
Yeah,
it's like we haven't even started with capitalism.
I hope I don't sound like I'm anti-capitalism, because I'm not. It's one of our defining characteristics. But I think you're right. I think the manipulation of money is long before we. I got a belt that says 1491. And it's got an eagle on it. And I'm like, But back to your point about the relationship between mental health and money and that survival thing. I go to Malibu in December twice, and I was just like, man, there was energy there. And I lived there for a while, and I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm saying that there is a state of complete and utter, the level of the risk of failure so high, the turbulence, the mental health, the addictions, the freaking, Malibu has these stay-home mom prostitution rings that I was like, what? Like, hearing about all this stuff when I was there, and I'm going, this is like, in my mind going, okay, I'm linking this high stakes of living, all this corruption, all this stuff with mental health. I'm going, there's a nice correlation I'm seeing here. And again, it's small pots. It's not everybody. I know great people in Malibu, incredible people, but you can't deny the fact that there's something, there in these very high energy, high volume of money and mental health. It's pretty standard in my opinion. I was there. The guy's house I stayed at, his house burnt down. He was talking about the insurance issues months before. Oh, right. 2 of my friends, their house burnt down, literally days after I left. And I'm going, these people that were surviving, probably maybe a lot of them were living outside their means to chase the dream. A lot of these people belonged in the production world, that they're not well off. They're just workers that made a living and work in production. What do you think they're feeling right now about the system and about this chase of the American dollar? And I mean, they're not probably going to report too much on that, but it's crazy that when we, unfortunately change usually doesn't come without I feel like the people on top losing something, acting like a child, throwing a fit, and destroying shit along their way. Why? Because of that old thing of hurting people hurt people.
Yeah.
It's just like an energy thing.
Hurt people,
like,
hurt people.
Yeah. I'm like, you take that model and you go, all these people on top, like they are going to do things. And unfortunately, we become the whipping boys, our society. And but I also look at it and go, this are the necessary steps for change to occur. I'm just glad it's not a full on civil war, which part of me thinks it kind of is a war. It's a top to bottom war.
Yeah.
And they want to make it a left to right to war.
Yeah, of course.
By just splitting us up.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's there's a lot of, well, you said it earlier, distraction ops, right? Make people think that the fight is between any other two groups other than the tax collectors and the taxpayers, because that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Right? It's, well, hurt people that are being stolen from through inflation, taxation, regulation, they're hurt. They're hurt financially, right? And you do it to them long enough, you end up with social revolution of some kind. They go out and they hurt people. And this is like the churn of human history, basically.
Yes.
Right? You have someone on top extracting, someone on the bottom being extracted from, until the parasite takes it too far. The host revolts, and then the whole thing rotates.
Yep.
And we go on and on and on. Yeah, exactly.
Mental health drugs and mental health are down. Get another war going.
Yes, exactly. What? Go ahead.
We were talking about this evolving of parasite and host, and there's like none of that stuff is new. None of the stuff is new, but what is new is our ability to disseminate information is new. Our ability to sustain financially off of alternative currencies is new.
Yeah.
Medicine, we're discovering it's not new, but it's
rediscovering
new.
ancient medicine.
It's literally a technology and how to use our own frontal lobe of our brain.
And the internet is what's disseminating all these things.
So we're having, conversation, and this information is going to hit people. That's new to a lot of people's ears. So it's amazing to living in this time of change, but I know change because my own personal journey and just observing change does not come without some sort of energy into that equation. And sometimes that energy can be disruptive. If I need to debride a wound, you gotta go in there and clean shit out.
Exactly.
The thing that I think the biggest issue, I feel like, not just for psychedelics and research and clinical trials, but with all the things, is the biggest obstacle to overcome is those that control the keys to the castle. When you turn the screws on them financially, where their position and the food on their table and their legacy and their family line and their namesake, when that starts to come into the picture of you're operating out of survival mode, and those people are acting like animals, and they're not going to create new things. They're not going to, find a better way to do things. They're literally being hijacked by money and position of power to stay in animal mode. And that's why we're not seeing a lot of these changes. So the answer is either more people need, there's a lot of state representatives that are doing psychedelics now. And what pisses me off is they look at us when we come in there and shake their hands. We'll get it passed. I'm like, yeah, I heard this before. And, oh wait, can you help my nephew Johnny out, or my niece? Can you, and we, we'll help him out. Come on, bring him in. We'll do it. And they still don't. And I'm going, you sons of bitches. Like, you sit there and it's like, but it's older in time. Like, I'm not mad. I'm just like, you see it and you're like, okay.
Well, and it's probably all the lobbying, I would imagine, that like big pharma lobbying would obviously want to keep psychedelic treatments from coming to market. Because big pharma is selling you the subscription as medicine as a service sort of thing, right? You just keep taking pills to mask the symptoms.
Right.
That they're obviously not going to like someone bringing a thing to market that cures the root cause, because then they can't sell you the mask for the symptoms anymore, right? If it's depression, and they're selling SSRIs to someone for 50 years or 30 years, whatever it is, and you give them one dose of Ibogaine or whatever the treatment is, and that goes away. Well, you've just destroyed that revenue stream for the SSRI selling pharma company. So I would imagine they're lobbying significantly through these politicians.
I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
Bobby Kennedy, who I've met over 2.5 years ago. I met him the day I was with you in Nashville at the Bitcoin conference. Met him in Alabama when I spoke. He spoke, and then I spoke a month later at the same house that I met him. That was a coincidence. Same house. Turns out the guy was in a wheelchair, the owner of the house. He was a psychologist, friends with Bobby when Bobby went to school there and at college, stayed friends with him. This psychologist, wheelchair bound, runs a psychedelic society in Birmingham, Alabama. So I was like, this is crazy. But, one of the things that, here's an example. His trial for the, to go through the Senate was supposed to be, like, if you chat GPT, it was supposed to be like 4 days ago. The reason why they postponed it is because they're running the Democrats and those that, it's not just the Democrats, but it's the people that are controlled by big pharma, big corporations, which includes like a lot of stuff in the food and like that. They're running right now because of how this is playing out. They're trying to find people on the right that they can manipulate and say, hey, we got you if you help us with some stuff. 170,000 doctors signed a petition. Something like 75 laureate winners signed a petition to block Kennedy from this hearings because they deemed him dangerous because of his view on vaccines. Now, I think if anybody does their homework, they'll understand that Bobby Kennedy is not against all vaccines. He's actually for some of them, but what he's not for is people throwing vaccines down our throat, and then we can't do the research and get any paper trails on anything. That's what he's for. Yeah. He wants people to be accountable.
Sure.
And if you got a bunch of moms coming up to him going, hey, we did our homework, and did you know that they are putting mercury in a dead vaccine to get the body's immune system to actually engage? That's what they did because the immune system wouldn't attack a dead vaccine. So they had to put something toxic to protect it. They were putting mercury in this. When Bobby sued him and won, there's your first one. And then he writes a book called The Real Fauci, Anthony Fauci. He doesn't get sued. Why? Why hasn't he not got sued in 2 years? Somebody wrote a book on you and basically said, wouldn't you sue them?
Because he told the truth?
Because he told the freaking truth. And now you got 170,000 doctors. They're signing petitions. And I've seen this too from the VA, but also in the medical world is they're hijacked. They've been taught the same thing and they get paid in that system. And so I've got cardiologists coming up to me going, you have more ability to heal someone than I do. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, we take out hearts and put other places in. We fix, we repair, but you heal because you're talking about the nervous system. And that's with or without psychedelics. I mean, you can get there a lot of ways, but like people in the medical community know, but the other people that are not willing to give up, their car and their stuff, like they get scared. And when they get scared, you can make them do about anything.
That's so true. That seems to be like one of the main strategies of the state is just keep people scared and they're just pliable, right? You can just kind of push them whichever way you want. And it's terrible. I hope that education is a means for people to wake up, but it does seem there's always going to be this cohort of people that just want to kind of be in the herd. We're kind of a herd species to some extent.
Safe there.
It's safe. Yeah. Safety in numbers. And that is a strategy, but, I don't know, it prevents people from waking up individually, which is unfortunate. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world. My thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. Knowing when to buy Bitcoin can feel complicated, and knowing how much to buy can be overwhelming, and getting started can be a headache, but it doesn't have to be. That's exactly why I recommend Coinbits, because it solves these major blockers and it's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin. With Coinbits' Roundups feature, you can automatically convert your spare change into Bitcoin while you shop. For example, when you buy a coffee for $3.50, the extra 50 cents is rounded up and it goes straight into Bitcoin. Here's why that's a huge win for you, because you don't have to be a tech wizard or try to time the market just right with Bitcoin. With Coinbits Roundups, you simply set it, shop, and stack sats. And you can set this up in under 2 minutes. Just visit the website, connect your card, and boom, you're buying a little Bitcoin every time you spend money. So stop wasting your time with complicated exchanges or confusing shitcoin apps. Coinbits simplifies your Bitcoin savings strategy. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove. Again, that's coinbits.app/breedlove. Let's say recently there are a lot of people blaming social media for the rise in mental health crises of one kind or another. I look at it a little more agnostically. I think, we connected through the Bitcoin conference, but a lot of Bitcoin connections occur on social media. Mm-hmm. A lot of things on my health journey, like about seed oils, getting seed oils out of the diet, carnivore diet, learning more about quantum biology, sunlight, all these things. Like I've learned a lot of it through social media and following people on social media. Those all seem to be good things. Those are additive to my life. Obviously, there's another side of social media where you could just be, super vain or fickle or whatever you want it to be. It's just a tool, right? It doesn't really have this moral character. Yet people in general, there seems to be this, if you watch a lot of mainstream media, they just sort of default blame social media. It's like, that's what's wrong with kids today and their social media. What are your views on the relationship between mental health, social media? Is it playing a role in us? Is it positive? Is it negative? How do you see it?
Yeah, absolutely is playing a role. I think it points to the power of intention, because when your intention I always say people build your own algorithm, because if you're not aware of it, they're building one for you. And whether it's ChatGPT or social media, this information is going somewhere. And if you're being an idiot to not think that it's being collected by higher things for profit. So does social media affect our mental state? Absolutely, 100%. One of the things that I've recognized, and I give the example of editing a film. If people that know about film editing, if you watch a movie from 1984, like The Natural, like one of my favorite movies, Robert Redford, if you watch the cuts, they're long. Like they could have cut 10 frames earlier. Yeah. So over time, we are being manipulated by what we take in, because this is where the psyops and all that stuff comes in. It's like, why is every network a 3-letter agency? Why is anybody in front of a microphone or a camera have an agent? Why? Yeah. Well, they're all being handled in some form or fashion. Right. We're all being handled by money in some form or fashion. But if a developing mind that's 12 years old or 14 years old, and we talk about the body shaming or all that stuff, the neurological impact they're getting from information ad nauseum, now it's got algorithm to it. Yeah. So that has an effect on your mental state. But if you want to break it down to neurochemistry, when you are in an environment where you've experienced a traumatic incident, or you're just in an unhealthy, turbulent environment at home. Mom and dad are yelling and, like that's most most of the people's environments. Then you're already exposed to high levels of cortisol. So now that's your new norm. And with cortisol, which people don't understand, cortisol is the strongest because it hits the adrenal glands fastest for survival mode. It is a straight shot. You can study it. It's incredible. It's lightning fast energy. And so what's better than feeling nothing is something, and that's energy. And so now if I can get myself looped into a source of cortisol or dopamine, well, guess what? Now I'm neurologically programming. I'm addicted. Yeah. And so, I think parents should take more accountability of their kids. I think, like they should be putting, parameters on them. But that's a whole different just conversation of, parenting and stuff like that. But yeah, if you leave a 16-year-old kid in front of a screen, you're feeding them to the wolves. Yeah. Without intention.
Right.
Yeah,
the parenting thing is definitely hard because I haven't crossed that bridge yet, but even managing just myself and my own social media consumption, there's a couple of tricks. One, turning your phone on black and white mode is a big help. It takes the blue light component out of it because all these little icons are like visual candy. So you're always wanting to click the next one and, click the red bubbles and all that. Take it to black and white. It just sort of diffuses it, makes it less gripping on the amygdala or whatever it's grabbing hold to there. And then, I think trying to be more of at least for me now, because a lot of the work is on social media, so I have to be on there a lot. I mean, even the teams I'm managing are on, chat apps or DM or whatever the thing may be. Trying to be, back to intention. I try to take an intention on there and like produce whatever I need to, send the messages I need to send and then get out, right? Because it's when you sort of just float, that's when you get lost and doom scrolling and all these things that they call. So
it's like someone being in a casino. The longer they keep you there, they got you.
Very much. And actually that is a perfect analogy. If you listen to Dr. Jack Kruse, he was saying this blue light technology was imported from the way they designed slot machine situations in Las Vegas, like to get people addicted with the blue light and you can't see the sun and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That's basically the same design principles that have been used in these devices. Yeah. So it's not really even an analogy. It's how it works.
Yeah. It's the Seal logo or brand would be, I'm up, they see me, I'm down. Yeah. Get in, get out. Yeah. Just keep changing that system. Don't get it hooked. And my wife will tell you, I'm like, I'm no special. Like I spend hours and time surfing, I like to say it's research, but it's, I get sucked into it too.
We're all living in the digital age and like, we're all on them too much probably, like to be real. But I think just to try and bring some balance is important, just getting out into nature, getting the sunlight, grounding, all the biohacking stuff. Yeah. It might not be fixing everything but it's you got to have some balance. You can't just live on this thing all the time.
Part of the nervous system controls the way I think, the way I act, and the way I feel. Acting is movement. So performance, athlete, all my workouts are based off training my nervous system. Yeah. Because I'm 44. I've trained all kinds of different ways. I want to train in movement, mobility. Yeah. Right? That's nervous system. Yeah. Instability, extreme environments, hot, cold. I'm training my nervous system. Yeah. And one of the things that I think the one part where people fall off is they're not creative enough to develop behaviors that are sustainable. For me, making fitness fun is one of my things. Why do I microdose? Because I feel freaking really good when I'm in, child's pose and I'm grounding out and I'm getting my breath connected to my stomach. And then I start moving on a microdose. That's a performance enhancer. I'm changing my neurochemistry. I'm associating a fun experience to something that some might see me as, oh my God, he's walking on his hands or he's suffering. And it looks horrible. In my mind, I've switched the neurochemistry. Yeah. So the association is switched. Right. I'll do it more. Laird Hamilton, you say the same thing. When I used to train with him, hoist Gracie in Malibu, it's like, make it fun.
Yeah.
Challenge your brain, work out underwater, do things, go and learn new ways to do it. So that's like sustaining, like that's how I keep trying to evolve, is more reps. The other side of it is more intention, right? So, you know, like bringing in your breath work, that most people don't understand the power of breath. Laird said this to me once. He said, you know, breathing is the first and the last thing you'll ever do in this life. Yet not many spend time to master it. Yeah. And I'm like thinking, all the work I've done in neuroscience and psychedelics and all this, I'm going, the breath is the key that unlocks the analytical mind. Yeah, the breath is the Yahweh. It is life. And when we can, you're basically manipulating your chemoreceptors that really are reading how much carbon dioxide is going to the brain. So if I start doing a box breathing, I can have a psychedelic trip without any psychedelics. It's really that breath and the diaphragm and the relationship to it and getting after it. And like, how's that a bad thing? Yeah. Yeah. No, seriously. The retreat we did in Mexico, we had one day, we've done 2 of the retreats, and each retreat we did one day of holotropic breathing, I think is what it's called. Ooh, that stuff is intense, man. That book is I think it's like I'd say the Bible of how to heal yourself neurologically. Yeah. That's written by Dr. Stan Goff. Okay. Has a killer story. A psychiatrist from Europe had 4,500 documented LSD like sessions with patients in Europe. He wrote this book called Holotropic Breathwork. He wrote it in 1970s. He republished it a couple years ago. But he basically explains breathwork without really using psychedelics in it. But obviously he has a lot of work with it. So like, yeah, the holotropic breathwork is incredible. The guys we had, like, there was a guy there, I won't name names just out of privacy, but he was not a guy you would even expect to be at a retreat like this. Like, we're doing yoga, movement, meditation, breath work, we're doing sweat lodges, all these kind of, you might call them just non-traditional modalities, right? For movement healing and all these things. This guy's just a good old boy from the Midwest, like doesn't really do any of this stuff, had never done yoga before. And so he goes through one of these holotropic breathwork sessions. And even after the fact, he's telling us he went into it very skeptical. He's like, oh, what is this? I'm just going to lay here and breathe. Like, what, so he's going in resistant basically. But we had really good facilitators, and yeah, he has this entire psychedelic experience that's like unveiling his childhood to him. And he's realizing these other problems he had in life and how they trace back to this childhood trauma. And he was connecting with other people in the room that were like helping him up the mountain. It was like this spiritual, experience basically. And he's, crying. And it was amazing. It was amazing. I was like, you just laid on the ground and you breathed a certain way for 60 minutes. And this was the experience he had. So it's like these tools, like we talk about the psychedelics and all that, and they all have different uses, but your breath alone is one of the most powerful psychedelic tools there is. And it doesn't matter who you are, like how resistant you might be, you can unlock things. The other thing on that situation, which is profound, is look at the environment he was in. Yeah. I think a lot of people, they want to make healing convenient for them in their schedule. I got 55 minutes to work out. I have, this thing of fitting it in. I get it. Yeah. But when you have an experience and I go, I'm leaving and I'm going out seeking a spiritual experience or rejuvenative, like whatever it is, like at a retreat, like you have to do that one initial part of cleave, right? Yeah. It's literally teaching you how to do the let go part before you even do it in the medicine. Yeah. So now you're like warming up the nervous system with what? Your intention. Yeah. And when you see someone have these breakthroughs on something that you would be like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
You have to account for the level of energy that was invested in that, consciously or subconsciously, in that group container. When that person feels safe, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah.
So in healing or in business or in any relationship, if I have trust, I get safety. I get safety. I can get healing.
Yeah.
Because you can get this happen. The neurological letting go.
And this was day probably 3 of 5 on the retreat. And so he had already made some good bonds with the other guys. And that's the future of healing the nervous system. Whether, I don't care what modality you use, but most people that are worth their weight understand that concept. If they can get you there, then the emotional purge happens, the energetic purge happens, and now we can start moving that energy around. Yes.
And I'm going, dude, this is crazy, because you don't have to be a doctor to do this.
No. And it's a new lease on life for a lot of people. I mean, some of these, like the problems he was dealing with, he'd been dealing with them for like 15 years. And then all of a sudden, it's not to say he solved them that day, but he had this breakthrough that presumably has helped him go on and change the way he was dealing with them.
Basically. They had an experience.
Yeah, he had an experience. I guess it's getting better, I think. There used to be a lot of stigma around, the masculinity was supposed to just be strong, like you said earlier, right? Just sweep it under the rug and keep on smiling, right? Just keep bottling it up and never show emotion and never cry and never let go and just soldier on through life. But obviously,
let me know how that works out for you.
You're ex-Navy SEAL. You've been around the guys that have literally fucking soldiered through life.
Well, I laugh.
What is it? I mean, is the stigma changing? And if so, like, how can we present this in a way to guys that think they're still in that mode of, I need to just bottle it up and be strong? Like, what is the right way to present this to them to get them to understand that there's a lot of value here for them to unlock?
Yeah, that's a big one. I tell people, what do you do? I teach warriors how to surrender. I'm biased because that's the only perspective I know, but comparatively, some would say that the SEALs are the modern day warriors, or these, gladiators, small units that can run forever, swim, and do these feats. And I know this to be true, that a wounded warrior is a broken boy. Mm. And one of the hardest things for me is when we lose someone to suicide. It's usually because they couldn't let go. Mm. And when you take away a man's identity, or what he thought was his identity, the wheels can start to fall off. And that's when I say the faith truly does save you, because when you have the faith to go into death and say, I'm okay, let's go. And you can do it in an experience that doesn't actually cause death, but you can have death to the ego.
Yeah.
Whoa. Because you may not be able to see it, but I know people out there can probably feel it in my voice right now, that that's how you change that culture. Right. Is the vulnerability in saying the thing that saved me was being strong enough to let go.
Yeah.
And not many can say it, because neurologically it's too much.
Right.
And not everybody will get there. And as a trauma medic, I'm not here to save everybody. I'm just helping those to save themselves.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I feel like at the end. You want to call a shaman or a priest or a healer or this or a coach or trainer, I don't care. But you're inspiring someone to make changes in their life, to believe in themselves. And if you look at the word inspire, it's to put spirit into, and that's energy. You're putting energy and you're putting into someone, and they can't, you're not going to write medical journals on that. You're not going to observe that. There's no way to, clean up, do that. But I'm telling you, there is real power in the intention of someone. And when I say a man is nothing without purpose and passion, there's a lot of men out there that have purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of men that have passion and purpose. And when you look at passion, what it is, it's color purple, passion of the Christ. Passion is nothing more than suffering through the lens of love. And the ultimate state of loving is letting go, what Christ did on the cross. So if I take my pain and I put it through the lens of love, I get passion. And when you get passion, I have the ability to connect to other people's pain, their own pain. And that means that I become compassionate.
Wow.
And I'm going, what the hell is this?
Wow.
Like, what is that?
Wow. That's reminds me of that Nietzsche quote that he who has a why to live for can bear any how. You know, like when you find that purpose, that thing you must do, you will go through any pain, right? Well, the thing you love to do, you'll go through whatever pain necessary to do it. And that's what makes it a passion, I guess. And then I like how you took that a step further, connecting it with other people becomes compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the connect. Well, in storytelling, conflict is what drives the story forward.
Yeah.
In all storytelling. That's why if you watch a movie, you're not going to get 10, 15 seconds in a movie that doesn't have some sort of conflict in the scene. It's there. They write it like that. And I was going to say that pain is the connector. It's trauma is the universal connector. And the trauma that happened in LA fires or North Carolina, let's not forget about them, and everybody else, like that trauma unites us. It really bonds us forward. You look at history. Every time we have a incident, 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, what happens? We become trauma is that thing, a universal connector.
Yeah. And it's an intrinsic part of growth itself. You know, it's like to grow is to go through trauma, right? It's like growing pains, we call them. And so no one, like, sure, some people have much more traumatic lives than others, but no one gets out, what's the old saying? No one gets out of life alive, right? Like we all go through something. Yeah. Even if it's not until the very end and you get sick and die. It's like, well, you're going to get sick and die at some point, like everyone does.
Yeah.
And the way, I've heard it put too, that the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death.
Yeah.
So that when you actually just accept reality for what it is, right? That it is, you are a flowing entity that's headed towards the equilibrium of death at some point. It almost gives you the impetus to make the most of your life, right? Like you start living once you accept that you're actually dying. And they're kind of one and the same, right? That, Marcus Aurelius, no man lives any other life than he now loses, nor loses any other life than he now lives. Like there's this there's this moment that none of these words fully capture it, but you get enough of them going, you're like, oh shit, it's like, it's here, it's now, I've got to do it. I've got one life.
Yeah, Brian Merzecki, I just finished his book, Immortality Key. I met him a couple years ago in DC. He's now heading Harvard's Psychedelic
I've been trying to get him on the show. We've been talking.
You got to.
Yeah.
He's awesome. So the first part of his book says, there's this theme in life that you must die to yourself in order to be reborn. And that is the most truthful. It's the neurological reset.
Yes.
And if the nervous system is designed to keep you alive, then the antagonist to the nervous system is death.
Yes.
And so when we can go into that death, even in micro doses, like if you're having a bad day, here's a powerful little therapy. Get in a safe room and start going into this death thing. Because not many will do it, but if you do it, there is a liberty to that when you can finally surrender to that, man, you are literally telling the nervous system, no matter what you threw at me, I'm in control and I know how to defeat you.
Yeah.
It's that reset button.
Right.
And what that looks like to me is like, take the most primitive fear of the nervous system, which is death, and go into it.
Yes.
And I'm going, whoa, like,
yes, you
don't have to be a SEAL to do that. It's just, it's hard for me to do it too, because we're all the same underneath this surface. It's profoundly important for people to understand that the nervous system can be reset. It can be rebuilt, but it takes work.
Sure.
It takes faith. And it takes feeling safe.
And it can be trained, right? Like it's almost like you're training mind over matter in those circumstances. I think even the cold plunge is a miniature version of this.
It's the best.
You get in that damn thing and every cell in your body is screaming like, exit now.
There it is.
But you just own it, right? And you sit in there and you sit in it and you meditate through it. And then eventually you transmute that discomfort.
Yeah.
The body adapts. And then before you know it, you're like in this blissful kind of like Buddha smile meditation. And even though you're miserable.
Yeah. So,
and then you get out and then the rest of the day feels amazing. So it's like just micro-dosing suffering in a way, almost like trains you for the larger suffering of life.
That's it. Being proactive. You're going to suffer in life.
Yes.
And it ain't for the faint of heart. You're going to deal with shit. And you know what? Any warrior will tell you, like we had at SEAL Team, Rudy Bausch, who was on Survivor at 72, the second season. He was a Master Chief of SEAL Team 2 for like 24 years. He was the top enlisted guy. That guy was hard as they come. And he put a sign up that said, warriors, are you ready for war today? ... You should be. And the thing with that motto is that like if you don't take life on and you don't do the work and you don't suffer well and you don't become aware, you're gonna suffer.
Yes.
I'd rather suffer on the front side and learn how to take those low points and go through them and go, man, this sucks, but I'm gonna sit in that.
Yeah.
I don't want it to have control over me.
Yeah.
Flow state, my name on Instagram, Flow State Frogman, but I laugh because I look at everything as a flow state. Everything is energy. Yeah. And you got this high and this low. Most people will hang out in the low because they're so reluctant and they freeze because that's what one of the functions of the sympathetic is: flight, fight, freeze.
Yeah.
You will stay there in the shit, in the low point of that wave, and without getting to the next high.
Yeah.
So if you can feel that low point coming on, maybe set up a micro ceremony, do some sort of, positive suffering, and you will actually defeat your nervous system.
Yeah.
The cold water, here's your power of intention. When we were SEAL students and SEAL instructors, we used cold water to select people out of the pipeline. And we called it surf torture, water torture, whatever. Now it's waterboarding, surf torture. So we get them hypothermic state. They get into their heads. They get shaking. They use the physical elements, physical suffering, and then they go quit. So, but you change the intention to, this is a modality that I can use to increase my nervous system, to produce delayed onset of dopamine, which is that feeling that people get after the sense of accomplishment, the actual spiking of dopamine after. All those fasting is the same thing.
Yeah.
You fast, you take away comfort. It's like comfort fasting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's try that out. All those things, it's amazing because you can use all those tools with or without psychedelics, but in an integration platform, if you put those in, what are you doing? You're preparing your nervous system to receive the medicine, and probably the best way you could do it because you just did it and you showed yourself you could do it in that cold water.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't have to be a doctor. And this shit has been around here a lot longer than our country.
Yeah. So how would you, someone's listening to this and because again, what we said earlier, it's psychophysiological, right? I agree with you. If you're in some kind of funky mental state, the first thing I would do is something physical, some ritual, physical movement of some kind, right? That's worked wonders for me throughout most of my life. Doesn't fix everything, but that's the first place to start. For someone that is just in a mental place that they don't want to be, and say they're not big on physical movement or cold plunge, they don't have any of these rituals ingrained in themselves yet, what would be your advice? What is the path they should start walking? Is there something they should do first, second, third? Should they just do anything? Which way would you send them to try and start to dispel any mental anguish they're having? Yeah,
that's a great question. I'm with you. I was an athlete, so my default is to do some physical thing to provoke a response emotionally.
Yeah, just get out of the head. Right?
Yeah.
I go to the gym, I immediately get out of the head. I'm in the body through pain.
And sometimes we need to get out of our head because there's so much energy in there, and we have a thick analytical mind. We need to beat the shit out of it, and a great way to do that is put some energy behind, run or workout or something. Yeah. But for those out there that that's not their drug of choice, is physical exertion. Although it's imperative that they have some sort of fitness. It's mind, body, soul. Come on, let's it's real simple. 3 things here. So I think the first thing is to become aware of a resistance in their life, something they're trying to change, become aware. And then you got to get off your ass and you got to do something different. You got to move. If you're getting shot at and you sit there, you're going to die. You got to move. So that requires energy. Find the energy in your gut, close your eyes, find something you're grateful for, find your future self, find the only person that's going to believe in you, and that's you. Find that and go, you deserve it. And go find some change in your life. Go seek it. For me, it's getting outside in nature, but it doesn't have to be. You can also hit up the creative side. So if you're a musician, start creating. Creating is one of the three that can provoke a lot of neurological change. So the idea here is, okay, what's happening? I'm in a shitty state. I need to change this. Okay, how do I do that? Become aware and then create some sort of movement. Leave your freaking house. Let's start there. I don't care if you pack your bag and you go all the way to the gym doors and you don't go in. I don't care. As long as you left, because chances are you're going to go work out. Once you're there, you're there. You're right. Yeah. So it's just like, you got to get through that buffer of that resistance. And for me, that's get the frick out of your environment. Go do something new. Go to a yoga class. Go to a jiu-jitsu class. Go seek community. Go find a poetry reading class. I don't care. But just go find something. And then the real work, when you find solitude, when you seek solitude, solidarity, and I was never comfortable by myself. I'm always been on a team. I love my tribes. But for me, the work comes when I'm by myself. And David wrote his Psalms in the caves. And when we go into solitude, we get out of all these distractions, all the cell phones, all the things that we're comparing ourselves, and we just remove ourselves. That's you telling you that you're worth it and that you're going to learn how to start to like stop everything and dissociate. And Joe Dispenza, who I trained under for like a year, developed his initial part of his veteran program. He said this incredible thing. He said, the only true place to create from is the sweet spot of the present moment. You can't create from the known past, and you can't create from the predictable future. It's when you become no person, nowhere, no thing, no time, no space. Now we're getting quantum physics. And that is when you create, like the story. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then there was something. The creation story supports this. But in order to get to that space, you have to dissociate from all those things. That's why meditation is some form. There's a lot of ways to do it. But it's some place, if you can say, I don't know if I'm meditating or not. Did you forget who you were? Did you forget how long you were there? Could you create a story in your head? And you start, that's what Joe does. This is why he gets paid the big bucks. He's teaching people how to neurologically do it. He's not telling them to do it with psychedelics, but he's speaking about the science behind psychedelics. Like it's the same thing. And I'm going, oh my God, like we have the ability to literally start to reprogram our neurochemistry, which is changing the way we think and changing the way we feel and act. What the frick?
It's back to, this ongoing, this realization that everything is an ongoing process, right? That everything is in motion, everything is in flux. There is nothing that's static. Everything's impermanent. With that comes constant, death and renewal, right? There's, again, glimmers of this kind of Christ story built into everything, right? Like the death of your old self and the renewal of your new self, right?
New skin, wineskin.
You're giving up the old habits and picking up new habits. All this is intentionally directing yourself through this process of endless change. It's everywhere, right? It's everything's either evolving or devolving, dying, renewing, and it's cyclical, right? We think there's a bright line, like, birth and then death, but our death then becomes the life, the food for other life forms that go into their own cycles, and it's this whole giant circle. So how has all of this changed, I guess, your life philosophy, your views on human potential? Like this whole experience, you've gone from being hyper-competitive athlete to, the highest regarded unit of soldiers, I think, in the U.S. military, right, is the Navy SEALs. I mean, there's Green Berets and other ones perhaps, but top of the top of military prowess. And now you've kind of almost coming like back around. You're trying to find the right modalities and ways to help people navigate the human experience broadly, but it sounds like more specifically a lot of these soldiers that have, literally gone through hell. If war is hell, they've been to war. How have your views on human potential, your life philosophy, how has it changed as you've gone through all of this?
I think service is a superpower. If we can learn how to serve, that makes everything great around us.
And this is informed by Christ, the servant king, I'm guessing.
I learned from the best. I don't know what to tell you. So service, like people are like, thank you for your service. Yeah. And that's funny because when you hear that, it's really actually pretty limiting when you thank someone for the service of an identity that they were. Yeah. They constantly go back to that thing. So it's like, they see it on the license plates and the things. It's always reminding us of who we were. And so as great as that is, you just be careful. Mind yourself of like, what is your intention behind that? Because I don't think the intention is to do that, but it can be perceived that way. I think my view on, like you said, the potential of humanity,
just human potential, we're obviously we can improve ourselves individually. We've improved ourselves collectively over the longest span of history.
Yeah. So this
your
is my
life philosophy and views on where we're going.
So in order to heal society, we got to heal ourselves. It works. Any medical expert would say you always heal a wound from inside out. So if we have a systemic infection in our society or disease of this narcissistic, uber fear-driven life of if I'm not right, if I have to be right, based on my identity or my view of all that. If we can elevate our lives from if we can heal ourselves, we can heal our family. If we can heal our family, we can heal our community. If we can heal our community, we can heal society. I don't have, I'm a realist too. I'm not thinking that we're going to see this utopic state, but I do believe that we can have heaven here on earth. I believe we can have heaven in our mind. I don't think heaven's a place we go. I think it's a form of energy. It's how we flow. It's what we leave behind. It's the story we leave behind. It's the energy we put in every single day in our awareness of how I'm waking up and how I'm going to be. And I'll tell you, you want to get over narcissistic, mental health conditions, just start thinking about someone else. And the reason we get narcissism is because those narcissisms are so hurting inside. They don't feel safe and they have to do things. And sometimes that narcissist will hurt other people. Because why? Because that's how they feel about themselves.
Right. It's a projection.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So what's the answer? Heal yourself.
Yeah.
And by healing that, I can liberate that. I can be that energy for people to see. And I'm like, man, let's just start there. With intention, creativity, and awareness, and go.
That's such a good point, the narcissism thing, because they say too about social anxiety. I heard this from Peterson, actually. People that have social anxiety, the trick is to just really focus on the other person and what they're saying. Because it's excess concern for yourself. Yeah. You're thinking what do they think about me? Or it was if you just put all your attention and awareness on the person you're talking to or the people you're interacting with, it doesn't leave any energy left over for you to have this self-analytical, critical thing. And it sounds kind of the same with the narcissism, right? It's if you actually just have concern for other people, then you're not going to have this excess energy to build up all this pain inside of yourself that you then project onto others as resentment or betrayal or whatever those things they might do. It's really coming to terms. The other thing to come to terms with, death, obviously, impermanence.
Yeah.
Part of that, and the reason we do die is because we are part of a collective, right? It's actually about the genetics ultimately and how they're passing through time. We're kind of just the filter for them. And so when you accept death, you all somewhat simultaneously accept that fulfillment is derived from living life beyond yourself, right?
Yes.
Having children, building businesses, doing things for other people, just loving, again, Christ's message, love thy neighbor as thyself. That's where real fulfillment comes from, actually. Like you can go live the hedonistic lifestyle and just pursue your pleasure to its umpteenth conclusion, but people have done that and they end up in a dark place. And
Solomon.
There you go. And so these things, like they're perennial lessons, but I guess they're perennial for a reason, right? Like we almost have to relearn them every lifetime, basically.
Yeah. That story, nothing's new under the sun. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Living in lack too is a big one for people. Like if you're trying to be something outside, if you don't know who you are, then how the hell are you supposed to love yourself?
Right.
But most people are so living in lack of like they're seeking their happiness and their fulfillment outside of themselves. And it's just a shame because, we know right now we got one life. Now, depending on your faith and your belief, like that's subjective. But the reality is we know this for fact. We only have this one life. And you talk about genetics and sustaining genetics. We're doing work now that the experience alters the genetics. The gene expression. That's what Dr. Joe's talking about. Like the gene expression creates the proteins, which creates the genes. And and you can get a room of people creating like the same gene expressions by saying in a week, doing meditation, like same focus, same level. Like, come on, like 2025, human beings need to wake up to the fact that it's not about everything we see or everything we hear or what we know. There's a lot more going on in this realm than we think.
Yeah.
But death, I would say this too. The last chapter of love is letting go. No matter what, we're going to let go of something. I'm going to have to let go. If my wife goes before me or she's going to, I go before her, like we're going to have to let go.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to learn the flow state of fighting my ass off and learning how to let go. Because if I can do those two things, I can flow. I can work through the grit, but I can also let go. And I'm like, man, like I'm no expert. I'm just trying to observe it and figure out how to help others get there too. That's it.
I think that's a beautiful place to bring it to a close.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming to Miami. I know this is out of your way, but this has been an awesome conversation. Do you have any final words of wisdom for the audience, or maybe just let them know where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah. You can find me at Flow State Frogman on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well. The clinic that I'm advising for is Beyond, BEOND, in Cancun. Check them out. If people are looking for a place to go in a safe manner, I would recommend that. And, I think we can always just show random acts of kindness too. I think that's never hurts the situation. And if we really want to make changes, we have to be unified. As much as it might seem impossible, I think it's a goal we should strive for. And together we can really see a better America and a better future for our kids.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.